You know, um, Usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there is this, I don't know, this comforting expectation of absolute precision.
Oh, yeah. Completely. It feels like structural engineering or something.
Right, like you fall off a ladder, you break your arm, and the x-ray pulls up that jagged, glowing white line on the screen.
And the doctor just points a pen at it and says, there it is.
Exactly. It's visible, it's categorized, and it's binary. Broken or not broken.
It is deeply reassuring. I mean, human beings crave that kind of localized cause and effect clarity when it comes to our biology.
But then you step out of the orthopedic wing and into the world of nutrition and longevity and biological aging, and suddenly that x-ray machine is entirely useless.
Yeah, we are looking at a diagnostic landscape that is, quite honestly, pretty murky.
For decades, the mainstream approach has treated food like simple arithmetic. We've been told it's just this ledger of calories in versus calories out.
Which is the absolute definition of diagnostic muddy waters, really. Because treating food as just a unit of thermal energy completely misses the biological reality.
Right, because what if we've been looking at the basic function of eating completely wrong?
Food isn't just math. It is code. It's a highly complex biological signaling system that tells your cells how to behave, when to divide, and ultimately how fast to age.
Which brings us to our mission today. We are taking a massive stack of sources for this deep dive.
Yeah, some really heavy hitters.
We've got a comprehensive medical review from the journal Cell specifically focusing on longevity and disease, plus clinical trial data out of King's College London.
And detailed nutritional profiles from the Mayo Clinic, Harvard Health, and some top expert dietitians.
And just to contextualize this for you listening right now, the journal Cell isn't like a trendy lifestyle blog.
No, not at all.
It is one of the most rigorous, highly cited, peer-reviewed scientific journals on the planet. When a comprehensive review on aging is published there, it is the scientific community basically establishing a consensus.
And our objective here isn't to just rattle off a generic list of healthy foods. I think everyone tuning in already inherently knows that a bowl of lentils is better for you than a processed candy bar.
I would hope so. Yeah.
Right. The goal of this deep dive is to synthesize this research into a precise, science-backed blueprint for a longevity diet.
We are going to deconstruct how to customize your nutritional intake to literally hack your body's aging process at the foundational cellular level.
It's all about cellular signaling.
To give you a taste of the paradigms we are about to break here, what if I told you that eating less of one very specific amino acid could mimic the cellular effects of a life-extending pharmaceutical drug?
It sounds like science fiction, but it's not.
Or even better, what if the way you are currently cooking your broccoli is literally boiling away its aggressive cancer-fighting properties before it even hits your dinner plate?
That one always shocks people.
Okay, let's unpack this.
I think the best place to lay our foundation is with the macro-level biology. Because before we can construct a blueprint of what to eat, we absolutely have to understand how the compounds in our food command our cells to age in the first place.
Makes sense. Where do we start?
The Cell Review lays this groundwork brilliantly by focusing on what biologists call highly conserved nutrient response pathways.
Let me stop you there. When you use the term conserved in a biological context, you mean these are genetic mechanisms that have been maintained across completely different species.
Exactly. Throughout millions of years of evolution.
Like the exact same cellular machinery exists in yeast, worms, lab mice, and humans.
That is the core of it. The fundamental biochemical relationships between the nutrients you consume and how your cells respond are remarkably similar, whether you are a single-celled yeast floating in a petri dish or a complex human being.
Wow.
And the first major pathway we really need to dissect is the protein-endocrine axis.
Okay, let's break that down, because protein-endocrine axis sounds like something straight out of a graduate-level biochemistry textbook.
It does sound intimidating.
But we are basically talking about how our bodies process proteins, and specifically animal-derived proteins, right?
Right. We are looking at the signaling cascade that occurs when you ingest protein. The Cell Review details how diets that are high in protein, particularly those rich in animal protein, and a specific amino acid called methionine activate pro-aging pathways.
So eating a lot of animal protein throws a specific switch.
Yes. When your digestive system breaks down high amounts of these proteins and floods your bloodstream with amino acids, you trigger something called the GHIGF1 axis.
Which stands for growth hormone and insulin-like growth factor 1, if I'm remembering the paper right.
You got it. And simultaneously, you activate another pathway known as TOR-S6K.
Let's pause on that one. TOR S6K, or MTOR as it's frequently called. I see MTOR thrown around constantly in longevity circles online. What actually is it?
MTO stands for the mechanistic target of rapamycin. You can think of it as the master nutrient sensor within your cells.
Like a radar system.
Yeah, a radar system is a great analogy. It's a protein complex that sits inside the cell and constantly samples the environment. When it detects an abundance of nutrients, specifically amino acids from the protein you just ate, MTOR flips the cellular switch to ON.
And on means growth, right?
Means rampant growth. The body goes into a state of cellular proliferation. It starts synthesizing new proteins, building new tissue, and rapidly dividing cells.
Now, if you are an 8-year-old child or a teenager going through puberty, this MTOR activation is precisely what you want. You biologically need to grow.
Absolutely. It's critical for development. But when you are a fully mature adult, keeping those growth pathways highly active is deeply problematic.
How so?
It essentially accelerates the aging process and dramatically increases your risk of age-related diseases.
I am going to push back on this a little bit, or at least play devil's advocate for you.
Go for it.
We are culturally conditioned to view growth as a universally positive thing. Growing muscle, growing stronger, regenerating tissue. Why is cellular growth suddenly the enemy of longevity once I hit my 30s?
It really comes down to the concept of evolutionary biology.
Okay, if we connect this to the bigger picture.
Right. Nature, from a purely evolutionary standpoint, does not care if you live to be 90 years old and play tennis with your grandchildren. Nature wants you to grow fast, mature quickly, and successfully reproduce while there is an abundance of food available in your environment.
So it's optimizing for reproduction, not retirement.
Exactly. The biological mechanisms that make you a robust, fertile 25-year-old are designed to maximize short-term viability.
Yeah.
But those exact same constant grow and divide signals are what drive tumor growth, exhaust stem cell reserves, and lead to cellular senescence when you are 55.
Okay, so think of your body's cells like a massive manufacturing plant.
I like.
When you pump in loads of raw materials like sugar and animal protein, the factory manager, which is MTOR, looks around and says, hey, we have unlimited supplies. Run the assembly line at 150% capacity.
Yes, push it to the limit.
The factory is building, it's expanding, it's churning out product. It's fantastic for short-term production. But because the machinery never shuts down, it burns out faster.
It degrades.
Right. The gears get stripped, the workers get exhausted, mistakes are made on the assembly line, and the whole factory just starts to fall apart.
That manufacturing analogy is perfect because that burnout you are describing is the literal definition of biological aging. We need to figure out how to stop the influx of raw materials, so the factory manager puts the plant into maintenance and repair mode instead of constant production.
And the Cell paper highlights some staggering genetic studies to prove how powerful this switch really is. They looked at laboratory mice with a severe genetic deficiency in the growth hormone receptor.
Which means their bodies physically could not utilize growth hormone, even if it was present in their blood.
Right. Their cells were essentially deaf to the signal to grow. Those mice with the GHRD mutation lived up to 50% longer than normal wild-type mice.
50%.
That's massive.
If we map that onto a rough human lifespan of, say, 80 years, a 50% increase puts you at 120 years old.
Yeah, that is not a marginal statistical anomaly. That is a completely different paradigm of life.
It's wild.
It alters the entire trajectory of the organism. But what's fascinating here is that we aren't just relying on rodent models.
We have human data on this too.
You do. The review points to incredible real-world human equivalents. Researchers have studied populations in Ecuador who possess a natural genetic mutation causing that exact same growth hormone receptor deficiency.
It is a condition known as Laron syndrome, right?
Yeah.
Which causes severe dwarfism.
Yes. Because they lack this receptor, their IGF-1 levels are virtually non-existent.
And what actually happens to their health span? The findings were completely paradigm shifting. When researchers analyzed this population, they found that despite these individuals having very high rates of obesity and generally poor diets, they have an incredibly low incidence of cancer and almost zero incidence of diabetes.
Wait, hold on, I need to clarify that. They are highly obese, carrying excess adipose tissue, but they don't get type 2 diabetes.
Almost never.
How does the biology square that circle? Obesity and diabetes are normally in lockstep with each other.
It all comes back to extreme insulin sensitivity. Because their cells are not being constantly bombarded with those grow and divide signals from IGF-1, the underlying metabolic environment is entirely different.
I see.
Their cells remain highly receptive to insulin, preventing the insulin resistance that normally precedes type 2 diabetes.
And what about the cancer aspect?
Well, rogue mutated cells, which we all produce every single day, don't get the biochemical encouragement they need from IGF-1 to proliferate into cancerous tumors.
So the factory is always in repair mode, meaning mistakes on the assembly line are immediately caught and destroyed before they become a problem.
Exactly. It's built-in surveillance.
That is just wild to me. So high protein, high IGF-1, high MTOR activation equals relentless growth, which eventually equals structural breakdown, aging, and disease.
That's the formula.
But protein isn't the only raw material running the factory at 150%, is it? We have to look at the other side of the coin, the sugar endocrine axis.
We absolutely do. High sugar and high overall caloric intake trigger a massive release of insulin from the pancreas. And we really need to reframe how we view insulin.
Because most people just think of it as a utility hormone that shuttles blood sugar into cells.
Right. While it does do that, insulin is also a potent signaling molecule in its own right. It directly activates that MTOR complex we just discussed.
So if I eat a massive bowl of refined pasta, the sugar spikes my insulin, and the insulin tells MTOR, hey, we have energy, turn off the cleanup crew and start building.
Precisely. When MTR is activated by insulin, it actively suppresses the cellular cleanup processes.
It just ignores the mess.
It tells the cell, don't bother recycling that old damaged mitochondria. We have plenty of fresh glucose to burn. This directly accelerates the aging process and leads to the accumulation of cellular junk over time.
Senescent cells, right?
Yes, senescent or zombie cells. They just sit there causing inflammation.
So the overarching rule seems to be eat less protein, eat less sugar, keep insulin low, and keep the factory in repair mode.
Generally, yes.
But I remember reading a specific caveat in the Cell study. This low protein rule isn't actually a blanket prescription for your entire human life, is it?
It is not, and this is where nuance is utterly critical.
Yeah.
Diet optimization must be age-specific. The Cell Review cites a major epidemiological human study analyzing protein intake and mortality. They found that for people under the age of 65, consuming a high-protein diet, which they defined as getting more than 20% of your daily calories from protein, was associated with a 75% increase in overall mortality risk.
Wow.
And, even more starkly, a 400% increase in the risk of cancer mortality.
Let me just repeat that so it really sinks in for you listening. A 400% increase in cancer mortality for people under 65, simply eating a diet where 1/5 of their calories come from protein.
Is sobering data.
That is a terrifying statistic for anyone currently chugging 2 scoops of whey protein isolate after every gym session.
It should certainly give pause to the mainstream fitness narrative that more protein is universally better.
Yeah, no kidding.
However, the exact same study found that when they tracked participants aged 66 and older, that massive negative association completely vanished.
Wait, really? It just went away?
In fact, the dynamic inverted. For the older population, a higher protein intake was highly protective.
Why would it suddenly flip like that?
Because as we age, we face a new threat. It becomes medically necessary to consume more protein to prevent sarcopenia, which is severe age-related muscle loss, and to prevent overall physical frailty.
Okay, let me make sure I am synthesizing this correctly. Under 65, your body is still naturally robust enough that dumping excess protein into the system acts like an aging accelerator because it drives IGF-1 and MTOR too hard.
Right. You are redlining the engine.
But over 65, your body's natural endogenous levels of IGF-1 and growth hormone have dropped off a cliff. At that point, your body is degrading faster than it's building.
Exactly.
So you actually need to force feed the system extra protein just to flip the switch back on enough to maintain your baseline lean muscle mass. You need to turn the factory back on just to keep the walls from collapsing.
You've summarized the biological irony perfectly. The precise nutritional profile that optimizes your cellular health at 40 is the same profile that could cause you to waste away at 75.
It requires a dynamic, shifting approach to diet over your lifespan. You can't just pick one rule and stick with it forever.
No, you really can't.
So if constantly feeding the cellular factory, especially with refined sugar and animal protein, ages it, what actually happens when we hit pause? I want to shift our focus here from what we eat to when we eat.
That's a huge transition.
Because this is where the longevity research gets incredibly practical for you at home. We don't need a prescription for this next part.
The power of when is arguably as important as the what. If we want to deliberately induce that maintenance and repair mode we keep referencing, what biologists call autophagy and proteostasis, we have to stop the influx of nutrients.
We have to create periods of scarcity.
Right, and that brings us to caloric restriction, or CR, and fasting protocols.
Let's start with CR, because I know the historical literature on caloric restriction is deep. We're talking about a severe, sustained reduction in daily calories without crossing the line into malnutrition, right?
Yes. The Cell Review covers decades of CR research, and the most compelling data comes from long-term studies done on rhesus monkeys.
And these are not quick 6-week trials.
No, these studies ran for over 30 years, monitoring the entire adult lifespan of these primates. They found that monkeys kept on a calorically restricted diet, usually around a 30% reduction from their normal ad libitum intake, showed remarkable delays in brain aging.
What does that actually look like in practice? A monkey with a younger brain?
It's highly quantifiable. MRI scans of the restricted monkeys showed they physically preserved their cortical gray matter volume compared to the control monkeys eating a normal diet.
Their brains literally shrank less over time.
Exactly. Furthermore, they maintained incredible insulin sensitivity, delayed the onset of muscle loss, and preserved their metabolic flexibility.
And we have human data on this too, don't we? The famous calorie study.
We do. The NIH-sponsored calorie study was a massive undertaking. They put healthy human volunteers on a strict CR regimen for 2 years.
That sounds brutal.
It was tough. But the systemic hallmarks mirrored the primate studies beautifully. The restricted group showed lower adiposity, significantly greater insulin sensitivity, lower cardiovascular risk scores, and vastly improved biomarkers of liver health.
And didn't they measure their DNA too?
Yes. When researchers looked at their methylation clocks, which are advanced diagnostic tools that measure your biological pace of aging at the DNA level, it indicated that their cellular aging was actually decelerating.
Wow. But here's the massive, unavoidable reality check for anyone listening. Living your entire adult life constantly naggingly hungry, restricting your caloric intake by 25% every single day at every single meal. I mean, that sounds absolutely miserable.
It does.
It requires a level of willpower that makes it essentially impossible for the general population to maintain long-term.
The behavioral science totally agrees with you. The compliance rate for strict, long-term caloric restriction in a free-living human population is exceptionally low.
It will just give up.
The psychological burden of constant deprivation is just too high, which is precisely why the scientific and medical communities have pivoted to investigating time-restricted eating, or TRE.
Intermittent fasting. It's the biggest buzzword in wellness right now. Everyone from tech CEOs to my local barista is talking about their feeding windows.
It has certainly captured the zeitgeist, but we need to cut through the hype and look at what the clinical data in the Cell Review actually supports.
Right.
In animal models, if you restrict the time they have access to food, without even reducing the total amount of calories they consume, you still activate those potent repair and defense pathways, particularly in the liver.
Oh, interesting.
And in humans, studies consistently show TRE leads to weight loss, reduced waist circumference, and measurable improvements in cardiovascular markers.
But the million-dollar question is, how long should the fasting window actually be? Because you go online and you see people doing 16 hours, 18 hours, or even the OMAD diet 1 meal a day, where they fast for 23 hours.
The Cell Review provides a vital correction to this extreme online culture. While pushing your body into severe daily fasting can certainly drive down insulin and force weight loss, massive epidemiological studies reveal a very dark side to extreme daily fasting windows.
A dark side?
Yeah, particularly those protocols that involve skipping breakfast entirely. Longer daily fasting periods, like the 16 or 18-hour protocols, have been consistently associated with increased mortality over the long term, particularly cardiovascular mortality.
Wait, seriously? So forcing yourself to fast for 18 hours every single day, which people think they're doing to improve their health, might actually be damaging their heart?
The data points that way.
What is the mechanism there?
It likely comes down to chronic stress signaling. While brief periods of fasting are a positive hormetic stressor, meaning a small stress that makes the system stronger prolonged, daily deprivation elevates cortisol and adrenaline as the body panics to maintain blood glucose levels.
Oh, because it thinks it's starving.
Right. And over years, that chronic elevation of stress hormones takes a huge toll on the cardiovascular system. The consensus detailed in the Cell Review suggests that an 11 to 12-hour daily eating window is the biological sweet spot.
An 11 to 12 hour window. So you eat your breakfast at 8 a.m. and you finish your dinner by 8 p.m.
Precisely. It provides the necessary metabolic benefits of a daily fast, allowing your insulin levels to drop to baseline, and giving your body time to switch to fat metabolism overnight without the psychological compliance issues or the potential cardiovascular damage associated with extreme daily restriction.
That feels entirely doable. It's basically just eliminating late-night snacking.
That's all it takes for most people.
Now, while we were talking about dietary hacks that mimic fasting, we absolutely have to address keto, because the ketogenic diet is pitched by its advocates as the ultimate longevity biohack.
It's everywhere.
The logic goes, if insulin is the enemy and carbs spike insulin, then a diet of almost zero carbs and high fat keeps insulin flatlined, forcing the body to produce ketone bodies for fuel.
The science on keto is incredibly complex and, honestly, often misunderstood. The Cell paper notes that in short-term mouse models, a ketogenic diet is highly effective at inducing autophagy in the liver within hours.
Because autophagy is required to synthesize ketone bodies, right?
Exactly. And in humans, it shows undeniable short-term therapeutic benefits for metabolic syndrome, rapid weight loss, and even cognitive function in certain neurological conditions.
Okay, I hear a massive but coming.
A very large but. The long-term epidemiological data in humans is deeply troubling.
A massive meta-analysis encompassing over 400,000 participants showed that long-term low-carbohydrate consumption, defined as getting less than 40% of your energy from carbs, actually increased overall mortality risk compared to those with moderate carbohydrate intake.
That's huge.
Furthermore, a highly specific study that followed over 100,000 men and women for decades found that a long-term low-carbohydrate diet, heavily based on animal products, was associated with significantly higher all-cause mortality.
Oh, wow.
And specifically for men, it was associated with a staggering 66% increased risk of cancer mortality.
Let me process that. So keto might be a phenomenal short-term therapeutic tool. Like if you are deeply insulin resistant and need to lose 40 pounds quickly to save your life, it works.
It can work wonders for that.
But as a lifelong permanent diet, if your version of keto relies heavily on bacon, butter, and heavy cream, you are actually accelerating your biological clock and increasing your risk of cancer.
That is the tragic irony of the dirty keto trend. You're keeping insulin low, sure, but you're flooding the system with methionine and saturated fats, which, as we discussed earlier, act as potent aging accelerators through other pathways.
Right, the MTOR pathway.
Exactly. Which brings us to perhaps the most fascinating, scientifically validated fasting intervention detailed in the review, Periodic Fasting and Fasting Mimicking Diets, or FMDs.
I have been waiting to get to FMDs since we started this research, because looking at the data, this feels like the closest thing modern science has found to an actual biological reset button.
This is groundbreaking stuff.
Explain what an FMD actually entails.
A fasting mimicking diet is a meticulously designed 5-day cycle of very specific eating. It is a plant-based, low-calorie, low-protein, low-sugar, and high-fat nutritional profile.
So you are eating, but very specifically.
Yes. The exact macronutrient ratios are engineered to trick your body's nutrient sensors into thinking it's experiencing a complete water-only fast.
Even though there's food in your stomach.
Right. However, you are still consuming just enough specific calories and micronutrients to prevent severe malnutrition and make the process behaviorally feasible for a normal person to complete while still, going to work and functioning.
So if you were listening to this right now and wondering, do I have to lock myself in a room and drink only water for a week to get these benefits? The answer is no.
No, definitely not.
That's the brilliance of it. You are eating soups, nut bars, olives, but the specific combination of what you are eating keeps IGF-1 and insulin completely flatlined.
That's the key. Your cellular factory sensors register zero incoming raw materials, so they flip the switch into deep survival and maintenance mode.
And the biological cascade that follows that switch is profound.
It really is. During those 5 days of the FMD, because the cell isn't getting energy from outside, it enters a state of deep autophagy.
Let's visualize that.
Think of autophagy like a biological recycling center combined with a Marie Kondo decluttering process.
Sparking joy in the cells.
Exactly. The cell starts hunting internally for energy. It identifies damaged, misfolded proteins. It finds old, dysfunctional mitochondria that are leaking free radicals.
Basically just making a mess.
Right. It even identifies autoimmune cells that are mistakenly attacking your own tissue. It breaks all of this cellular junk down and burns it for fuel.
It is literally taking out the cellular trash.
It is clearing the biological debris that causes aging. But here's the most critical, often overlooked part of the FMD protocol. The magic does not exclusively happen during the deprivation phase.
Oh.
No. The real magic, the actual rejuvenation, happens during the refeeding phase.
Explain that mechanism, because I think our cultural mindset assumes the benefit is entirely in the suffering and the deprivation, like no pain, no gain.
It is a symbiotic two-part process.
Yeah.
The 5-day fast clears the damaged tissue and hollows out the old cellular structures. But when you break the fast and reintroduce normal, healthy food, the sudden influx of nutrients triggers a massive activation of stem cells. The body registers that the famine is over, and it initiates regenerative, embryonic-like developmental programs to rebuild the tissue that was just cleared out.
So it's like tearing down a dilapidated house down to the studs, and the refeeding phase is the crew arriving with fresh lumber to build a brand new structure.
That is a brilliant way to picture it.
And the cell paper mentions this working specifically in diabetes models, right?
It does, and the results were paradigm-altering. They utilized mouse models of type 1 diabetes.
Type 1, so where the body attacks itself.
Yes. In type 1 diabetes, the insulin-producing beta cells in the pancreas have been destroyed by the immune system.
Right.
When researchers applied cycles of the FMD followed by refeeding to these mice, it actually promoted a gene expression profile in the pancreas that is normally only seen during embryonic development.
Wait, like going back to being a fetus?
Cellularly speaking, yes. The stem cells woke up, and it led to the physical reversal of beta cell depletion. The mice began producing their own insulin again.
Let me make sure that point lands for everyone listening. The dietary protocol literally caused the body to regrow the functional destroyed cells of the pancreas.
Yes, they regenerated their own organ tissue.
That is unbelievable.
And the applications of this stem cell regeneration extend to oncology as well. Clinical trials in humans have shown that implementing FMD cycles can significantly increase the efficacy of chemotherapy and hormone therapy in breast cancer patients.
How does starving the patient help the chemotherapy? That seems counterintuitive.
It's called differential stress resistance. When you put a patient on an FMD, their healthy cells go into a quiet, shielded survival mode. They stop dividing.
Because there's no energy to divide.
Right. But cancer cells, by definition, do not obey stop signs. They keep trying to divide, but they have no nutrients. This makes the cancer cells incredibly stressed and vulnerable.
So they're weakened.
Exactly. When the chemotherapy is administered, the healthy cells are protected behind their biological shields, minimizing the toxic side effects of the drugs, while the vulnerable cancer cells take the full, lethal hit of the treatment.
That is just phenomenal science.
It really is. And because FMDs only need to be done periodically, perhaps 3 or 4 times a year, to see lasting metabolic benefits, it is a highly feasible medical intervention.
Okay, so we have established the macro rules of the biological game here. We need to keep animal protein moderate to avoid spiking IGF-1.
Okay.
We need to keep refined sugar low to avoid spiking insulin. We need to eat our meals within a reasonable 11 to 12-hour daylight window.
Yes.
And perhaps we consider throwing in a 5-day fasting mimicking diet a few times a year to trigger deep autophagy, clear out the cellular trash, and wake up our regenerative stem cells.
That's the macro blueprint.
Now that we deeply understand the aging pathways and the critical importance of fasting, what exactly should you be putting on your plate during those 11 to 12 hours?
That's the fun part.
Let's transition from the mechanics of fasting to the actual foundation of feasting. We need to build the base of the longevity diet.
The foundational architecture of the plate. The cell review provides highly specific parameters for the macronutrient balance of a diet optimized for lifespan.
Okay, what are the numbers?
Synthesizing decades of data, they recommend a daily diet that is composed of 35 to 60% non-refined complex carbohydrates, 10 to 15% mostly plant-based proteins, and 25 to 35% mostly plant-based fats.
45 to 60% carbohydrates. I feel like anyone who has been scrolling diet talk, reading fitness blogs, or following low-carb gurus for the last decade just had a mild panic attack hearing that number.
I know. It sounds blasphemous to some.
Because carbs have been completely, utterly demonized as the root cause of the obesity epidemic.
They have been unfairly demonized because public health messaging really struggles with nuance. We have to draw a massive, impermeable line between refined simple sugars like high fructose corn syrup, white bread and pastries, and non-refined complex carbohydrates.
They act totally differently in the body.
Completely differently. We are talking about whole foods that are structurally complex and packed with fiber. And when we look at that 10 to 15% plant-based protein requirement, one specific food group stands out as the absolute heavyweight champion across all our sources.
From the hard science of the Cell Review to the practical guidelines of Harvard Health and the Mayo Clinic, all arrows point to one thing.
Yes.
Legumes, beans, the magical fruit.
Exactly. Kidney beans, black beans, garbanzo beans, lentils, peas. Both Harvard and the Mayo Clinic highlight them as peerless low-fat protein and fiber powerhouses naturally packed with essential micronutrients like folate and thiamine.
But the vital scientific link here, the reason they are the cornerstone of longevity, goes right back to the first section of our deep dive.
Right. Let's connect the dots back to the protein-endocrine axis. We talked extensively about how animal protein is uniquely rich in an amino acid called methionine.
And how elevated methionine is the key that turns the mTOR ignition switch, spiking IGF-1 and accelerating cellular aging.
Yes. In highly controlled laboratory settings, one of the most reliable, reproducible ways to extend the lifespan of an organism is through a protocol called methionine restriction.
So you just don't feed them that one amino acid.
Exactly. If you strictly limit a mouse's dietary intake of that one specific amino acid, they live significantly longer and have a drastically lower incidence of age-related cancers.
Wow.
But attempting to translate methionine restriction to a free-living human diet is incredibly difficult if you consume meat, because animal skeletal muscle is absolutely loaded with it.
Which brings us back to the humble lentil.
Exactly. Plant proteins, and legumes in particular, naturally have very low endogenous levels of methionine.
So they have other amino acids, just not that one.
Right. Therefore, relying on a dietary structure where the bulk of your daily protein comes from legumes essentially mimics the life-extending methionine restrictions seen in longevity labs.
That is so cool.
You get the varied amino acids you need to maintain your muscle mass and cellular function, but you avoid the specific amino acid trigger that throws the aging switch into overdrive.
That is a massive aha moment. You don't need access to $1 million longevity clinic to hack your amino acid profile and manipulate your mTOR signaling. You just need to eat a bowl of lentil soup instead of a steak.
The science of longevity is often profoundly simple in its application.
And alongside those legumes, the other critical pillar of that 45 to 60% carbohydrate base is whole grains.
Yes, very important.
Harvard emphasizes oats, quinoa, and brown rice, and they focus heavily on the soluble and insoluble fiber contained in these grains. But I want to pull a really specific, fascinating detail from the Mayo Clinic source, because they spotlight something called wheat germ.
Ah, wheat germ.
Now, most people buy heavily processed white flour where the germ has been completely stripped away by industrial milling. What physically is the germ?
To understand the germ, you have to visualize the anatomy of a whole grain of wheat. Think of it as having three distinct parts. The bran is the hard protective outer shell, which provides bulk and insoluble fiber.
Okay, the shell.
The endosperm is the large, starchy middle section, which provides quick energy. And that starchy endosperm is almost entirely what white flour is made of.
Just the starch.
Right. And finally, the germ is the tiny reproductive core of the seed. If you planted that intact grain in the soil, the germ is the literal embryo that would sprout into a new living plant.
So the germ is the biological life force of the grain.
Biologically speaking, yes. Because it has to sustain the energy requirements of a sprouting plant until it can grow leaves and photosynthesize, the germ is densely packed with essential nutrients.
Makes total sense.
The Mayo Clinic notes that wheat germ is an exceptionally concentrated source of thiamine, magnesium, phosphorus, and zinc. It is an incredibly efficient way to boost the nutritional density of a meal.
How do you eat it?
You can just sprinkle a tablespoon of it on yogurt or oatmeal, and you are consuming the most nutrient-dense fraction of the plant.
And wrapping up this foundational macronutrient section, I have to ask you to explain fiber.
Oh, fiber is crucial.
Because colloquially, we talk about fiber like it's just nature's broom sweeping out the digestive tract to keep you regular.
That's the reputation it has.
But you mentioned earlier that fiber plays a far more sophisticated role. It is actually critical for regulating those aging pathways we discussed.
Fiber is perhaps the most unappreciated anti-aging compound in the human diet.
That's a bold claim. Why is it critical?
Because it physically and mechanically regulates the sugar endocrine axis. Let's use an example.
Okay.
When you eat an apple, you are consuming fructose, which is sugar.
Right.
If you drank that apple as filtered juice, that sugar hits your stomach, absorbs instantly through your intestinal wall, and spikes your blood sugar, which triggers a massive insulin release, which activates mTOR.
But when you eat the whole apple, it's different.
The mechanical reality changes completely. The apple skin provides insoluble fiber, which adds bulk. The fleshy inside of the apple provides soluble fiber.
Soluble meaning it dissolves.
It mixes with water. When soluble fiber mixes with water in your digestive tract, it forms a thick, viscous gel.
Like a sponge.
More like a barrier.
Mm-hmm.
This gel physically coats your intestines and traps the sugar molecules, drastically slowing down their absorption into your bloodstream.
So instead of a massive sudden spike in blood glucose, which sets off the insulin alarm bells and accelerates aging, you get a slow, steady, controlled drip of energy.
Exactly. The fiber blunts the insulin spike entirely.
That is brilliant.
But its job doesn't end there. That fiber continues traveling down into your large intestine, where it arrives intact. Your body cannot digest it.
I mean, your gut bacteria can.
Precisely. Your microbiome, the trillions of beneficial gut bacteria can. Those bacteria feast on the fiber. They ferment it, and as a byproduct, they produce compounds called short-chain fatty acids, primarily butyrate.
Butyrate, and what does that do?
These short-chain fatty acids cross into your bloodstream and have potent systemic anti-inflammatory effects throughout your entire body. So by eating complex carbs rich in fiber, you are simultaneously preventing the activation of insulin-driven aging pathways and actively deploying anti-inflammatory compounds.
Okay, with our macronutrient foundation poured and set, we have our beans and our whole grains acting to keep our insulin and IGF-1 levels quiet. We need to build out the rest of the dietary architecture.
We need the specialized troops.
Yes, specialized troops. We need compounds that actively defend ourselves from day-to-day oxidative stress, environmental wear and tear, and genetic mutations. Let's explore the cellular defenders.
And the undisputed front line of that cellular defense is the cruciferous vegetable family.
We are talking about broccoli, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, turnips, radishes, cauliflower, kale.
The heavy hitters.
The hearty vegetables that, let's be honest, smell a little bit like sulfur when you leave them in the fridge too long or overcook them.
That sulfur smell is actually the olfactory clue to their biological power.
Oh, really?
Yeah, our source document, Information Sheet 7 on cruciferous vegetables, analyzed alongside the Harvard Health Profile, breaks down the fascinating chemical warfare happening inside the cellular walls of these plants.
Chemical warfare, I love that.
Cruciferous vegetables contain highly specific phytonutrients called glucosinolates.
Okay, glucosinolates.
Yes. Now, on their own, sitting intact inside a broccoli floret, glucosinolates are relatively inert. They don't do much.
They're just hanging out.
But when the plant tissue is physically damaged, for example, when a caterpillar bites into a leaf in the wild, or when you chop it with a knife, or chew a piece of raw broccoli, a separate compartment in the plant cell ruptures.
Okay.
This rupture releases an enzyme called myrosinase.
It's like a biological glow stick. You have two separate chambers of liquid, and nothing happens until you snap it, breaking the barrier, allowing the chemicals to mix and react.
That is a brilliant analogy. When you chew the broccoli, you snap the glow sticks.
The glow stick, I love that.
The myrosinase enzyme interacts with the glucosinolates and rapidly catalyzes a chemical reaction, breaking them down into a brand new class of highly active compounds called isothiocyanates, or ITCs.
And why is the longevity community so obsessed with ITCs?
Because ITCs are incredibly potent, chemically aggressive anti-cancer agents.
Wow.
In extensive laboratory studies, the breakdown products of glucosinolates have been shown to actively inhibit the growth and spread of prostate cancer cells. And they don't just stop the growth, they actually promote the death of those cancer cells.
Wait, they promote apoptosis? They force the cancer cells to initiate a self-destruct sequence?
Yes, they interfere with the cancer cell's ability to divide, effectively neutralizing the threat.
That's incredible.
And the epidemiological data in humans fiercely backs up what we see in the petri dish.
What do the numbers look like?
Information Sheet 7 cites a pivotal study showing that this protective association is particularly strong for the most advanced, aggressive forms of prostate cancer. Listen to this specific data point. Having 3 or more servings a week of broccoli or cauliflower, compared to having less than 1 serving a month, is associated with a 45% decrease in prostate cancer risk for broccoli and a 52% decrease for cauliflower.
Eating 3 servings of cauliflower a week cuts your risk of aggressive prostate cancer in half. That is astounding.
It's a massive risk reduction from a grocery store vegetable.
But here is where the biology gets really interesting. And honestly, it's a little tragic for anyone who grew up in a household where vegetables were boiled to a pulp.
Both very tragic.
There is a massive structural catch to this chemistry experiment, isn't there?
A critical, often fatal catch to the cooking process.
Let's hear it.
We mentioned the enzyme myrosinase, which is absolutely required to convert the inert glucosinolates into the cancer-fighting ITCs.
Right.
Well, enzymes are proteins, and all proteins are highly sensitive to heat. If they get too hot, they denature, they lose their physical shape and stop functioning.
They just break.
Yes. The information sheet explicitly warns that high heat cooking, particularly boiling or microwaving on high for extended periods, completely denatures and destroys the myrosinase enzyme.
And without the enzyme, the glow stick doesn't work.
Exactly. Furthermore, the glucosinolates themselves are highly water-soluble, meaning they leach out of the vegetable and into the boiling water.
So let me paint a picture of my childhood dinners. If you take a beautiful head of broccoli, drop it into a pot of rolling, boiling water, and leave it there for 10 minutes until it turns a dull, army green.
The classic preparation.
You are literally killing the enzyme with the heat, extracting the precursor chemicals into the water, and then draining all those cancer-fighting superpowers down the kitchen sink.
Exactly. By the time it hits your plate, you are left with green, fibrous mush that possesses only a fraction of its original biological potential. The glow stick is broken, and the chemicals are gone.
So how are we supposed to eat them?
To retain their anti-cancer properties, cruciferous vegetables must be eaten raw-like in a slaw or salad, or only mildly steamed at low heats for 3 to 4 minutes.
Just a few minutes.
Right. The ambient heat of mild steaming is low enough to preserve the myrosinase enzyme, but it softens the tough cellulose plant walls just enough to make the nutrients more bioavailable for digestion.
That is such a vital, practical takeaway. Stop boiling your broccoli.
Please stop boiling it.
Now, a question of pharmacology here. If these vegetable compounds are powerful enough to literally force cancer cells to self-destruct, they must be interacting with other major systems in the body. Are there any medical interactions people should be aware of?
There's a highly notable interaction documented in the sources, yes.
What is it?
The information sheet points out that the potent compounds in cruciferous vegetables can significantly increase the clearance rate of a specific drug called theophylline in the liver.
Theophylline. What's that prescribed for?
It's commonly prescribed for respiratory conditions like asthma, chronic bronchitis, and emphysema.
Okay, so lung issues.
Because the ITCs in broccoli and cabbage ramp up the liver's natural detoxification pathways, the liver processes and eliminates the asthma drug much faster than normal.
It flushes it out too quickly.
Yes.
Oh.
This means the patient might be clearing the drug before they receive the full therapeutic dose they need to breathe easily. Patients on theophylline who consume high amounts of cruciferous vegetables need their blood levels closely monitored and their medication dose potentially adjusted by their physician.
It is genuinely amazing that eating a specific cabbage can alter your liver function to the point of overriding a targeted pharmaceutical. It proves the premise that food is biological code.
It absolutely does.
What other cellular defenders from the sources do we need to draft onto our plate?
We must include tomatoes. Harvard specifically notes that tomatoes are uniquely high in a phytonutrient called lycopene.
Lycopene?
Yes, lycopene is another powerful targeted defender against prostate cancer. But interestingly, tomatoes require the exact opposite culinary approach compared to broccoli.
I want to cook them.
Yes. Lycopene is tightly bound within the tomato's cellular matrix. It becomes significantly more bioavailable when the tomato is physically crushed and heated.
Oh, that's convenient.
Furthermore, lycopene is fat-soluble, not water-soluble. So slowly simmering crushed tomatoes in a healthy fat, like extra virgin olive oil, maximizes your body's ability to absorb the lycopene.
Okay, the rules of the kitchen are becoming clear. Raw or lightly steamed broccoli to protect the enzymes. Cooked and crushed tomatoes in olive oil to release the lycopene.
You got.
Got it. What else makes the list?
Dark leafy greens, particularly spinach.
Popeye had it right?
Both the Mayo Clinic and Harvard highlight them for providing high concentrations of specific carotenoids called lutein and zeaxanthin.
What do those do?
These specific phytonutrients are fascinating because they selectively accumulate in the macula of the retina in your eye.
In your eye.
Yes. They act like internal sunglasses, filtering out damaging blue light and supporting healthy vision as we age, while simultaneously circulating throughout the body to manage oxidative free radical damage in other cells.
And the Mayo Clinic brings up a couple of everyday, highly accessible staple apples and sweet potatoes. We covered the brilliant mechanical function of the fiber in apples earlier, but sweet potatoes are fascinating to me from a pure calorie to nutrient ratio perspective.
They're arguably the greatest nutritional bargain in the produce section.
Really? A bargain.
Definitely. The Mayo Clinic points out that their vibrant, deep orange color is the visual indicator that they are absolutely loaded with beta-carotene, which the human body efficiently converts into vitamin A.
And vitamin A is for?
It's critical for cellular differentiation and helps cells manage day-to-day oxidative wear and tear. And a half of a large baked sweet potato provides an enormous dose of this protection for just 81 calories.
81 calories, that's nothing.
It delivers incredible nutrient density without tipping the overall caloric balance that we established as so critical back when we talked about fasting.
All right, so our dietary blueprint is really taking shape. We've defended the cells against rogue cancer mutations and environmental wear and tear.
We've got our armor on.
But if our goal is extending total lifespan, we have to ensure we are simultaneously extending health span. I think everyone listening would agree. No one wants to live to be 100 years old if their memory fails at 75, or if their cardiovascular system collapses.
Quality of life is paramount.
We have to optimize the brain and the heart.
And for this optimization, our sources provide some phenomenal, highly specific clinical data regarding the consumption of berries, fish, and the nuances of vegetable juicing.
Let's dive straight into the berries, specifically wild blueberries. The data from the King's College London trial.
This is a great study.
This study is absolutely fascinating to me because so much nutrition research relies on epidemiological surveys, where they just ask thousands of people what they ate last year and look for trends.
Which can be notoriously unreliable.
But King's College actually ran a controlled clinical trial on healthy older adults.
Yes, the methodology here is what makes the findings so robust. They took 61 healthy men and women, ranging in age from 65 to 80. They set up a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial, which is the undisputed gold standard of clinical research. They gave the test group a daily beverage containing 26 grams of freeze-dried wild blueberry powder.
Why powder instead of just fresh berries?
They used freeze-dried powder to ensure that every single participant received the exact same standardized dose of phytonutrients every day, which is equivalent to eating about 178 grams, or a very generous handful of whole fresh berries.
Got it. Precision.
Exactly. The control group received a matching placebo beverage that looked and tasted identical but lacked the active compounds. They maintained this daily regimen for 12 solid weeks.
And what were the measurable results? Because I know they were uniquely tracking both cognitive and cardiovascular markers simultaneously.
The results were definitively striking across both domains.
What happened with the brain?
Cognitively, the group consuming the wild blueberry powder showed markedly better episodic memory and significantly improved accuracy on complex attention tasks. They demonstrated greater mental flexibility and task-switching capability compared to the placebo group.
So they were literally thinking sharper and remembering more.
Yes, and on the cardiovascular side, the wild blueberry group experienced lower resting systolic blood pressure. But crucially, they demonstrated a significant increase in flow-mediated dilation, or FMD.
Let's define that term, flow-mediated dilation. What exactly is that measuring, and why does a cardiologist care about it?
FMD is an ultrasound-based measurement of endothelial function.
The endothelium is the inner lining of the blood vessel.
Correct. The delicate inner lining. When blood flow increases, say, when you start exercising, a healthy blood vessel should instantly dilate or widen to accommodate the increased volume.
Okay, I can picture that.
Imagine a flexible rubber fire hose expanding when the water gets turned on. FMD measures how well and how quickly your vessels expand.
So a higher number is better.
An increased FMD means your blood vessels are supple, flexible, and healthy, which directly correlates to a significantly lower long-term risk of heart attacks and strokes.
So consuming a handful of wild blueberries every day for 3 months essentially lubricated their vascular system, making the pipes more flexible, while simultaneously sharpening their memory.
That's a great summary.
What is the actual biological mechanism behind this? What chemical compound inside the blueberry is doing that heavy lifting?
The researchers point directly to the deep blue pigments of the berry, which are a class of polyphenols called anthocyanins.
Anthocyanins.
The study noted a fascinating detail. After the 12 weeks of consumption, there was a measurable increase in the metabolites of these specific anthocyanins in the urine of the volunteers.
Meaning the body wasn't just digesting them and flushing them out immediately, they were actually being absorbed and utilized.
Exactly. It proves that these compounds are being deeply metabolized, entering the systemic bloodstream, crossing the blood-brain barrier, and acting as powerful systemic anti-inflammatories.
So they're going straight to the brain.
Yes. They physically reduce the oxidative stress inside the delicate capillaries of the brain and the larger endothelial walls of the cardiovascular system.
That is incredible validation for a simple fruit. And moving our focus from berries to fish, both the Mayo Clinic and Harvard sources heavily highlight the inclusion of seafood, particularly salmon, trout, and sardines.
They highlight them specifically for their high concentrations of omega-3 fatty acids, primarily EPA and DHA.
And why are those so important?
These particular fats are structurally critical for the human body. The human brain is roughly 60% fat by weight, and DHA is a major structural component of the cerebral cortex.
So it's the literal building block of your brain tissue.
It is. Consuming adequate amounts of these marine omega-3s supports neurotransmitter function, reduces systemic inflammation in the joints, and profoundly supports cardiovascular rhythm and health.
And the Mayo Clinic specifically notes a practical detail about the types of fish, right?
Yes, salmon, trout, and sardines are lower on the oceanic food chain.
Which means less mercury.
Exactly. They accumulate significantly less mercury and heavy metals than large predatory fish like tuna or swordfish, making them much safer for regular weekly consumption.
Now, while we are trying to optimize our nutrient intake, I want to bring up a massive health trend that the Mayo Clinic directly addresses in their profile, vegetable juicing.
Juicing, yes.
People love throwing raw tomatoes, beets, carrots, and spinach into an expensive juicer to extract a massive, concentrated hit of liquid vitamins.
It's extremely popular.
The Mayo Clinic notes it can be a great low-calorie, low-sugar nutrient boost. However,
This raises an incredibly important question about biology. How do we balance getting these highly concentrated micronutrients without sacrificing the vital mechanical benefits of whole food digestion?
right, because of what the juicer leaves behind.
As the Mayo Clinic strictly warns, the act of juicing entirely strips away and discards the beneficial fiber from the plant.
The pulp just goes in the trash.
And as we discussed extensively during our breakdown of the apple, that physical fiber is the exact mechanism that blunts the insulin spike and feeds your microbiome.
Right. So if you run a pound of carrots and beets through a juicer, you are absolutely getting the vitamins and the nitrates.
Sure.
But you are also getting a massive concentrated dose of plant sugars entirely divorced from their protective fibrous matrix. You drink it, it hits your bloodstream instantly, and you are accidentally triggering that exact sugar endocrine axis spiking insulin and activating mTOR that we are desperately trying to avoid.
It completely alters the metabolic response to the food.
So what's the workaround?
The Mayo Clinic strongly suggests that if you juice, you should either manually mix the fibrous pulp back into the liquid or strictly consume small amounts of juice as a supplemental diet boost, rather than using massive glasses of it as a meal replacement.
And there's a warning about the store-bought stuff, too.
A crucial warning for those buying commercial pre-bottled vegetable juices. You have to aggressively check the labels for massive amounts of added sodium, which completely counteracts the cardiovascular benefits of the vegetables.
So it's all about biological context. A nutrient is ultimately only as good as its delivery system.
Very well put.
Which brings us to our final section of the blueprint. We are looking for the final pieces of the puzzle. Back when we were talking about macros, the Cell Review recommended that a substantial 25 to 35% of our daily longevity diet should come from plant-based fats.
That's a good chunk of calories.
We need to explore the absolute most potent, scientifically backed sources of these fats to close out our protocol.
We need to transition to the fat and fiber powerhouses of the natural world: extra virgin olive oil, nuts, and specific seeds.
Let's start with the undisputed staples. Both Harvard and the Mayo Clinic universally tout extra virgin olive oil as a premier foundational source of antioxidant polyphenols and heart-healthy monounsaturated fats.
It's liquid gold.
The directive is simple. Use it instead of saturated butter. Use it to dress your salads. Use it to gently heat your tomatoes to release the lycopene.
And they highlight tree nuts, specifically almonds, for their dense vitamin E content.
But I want to zero in on a very specific nut, highlighted by Dr. Saurabh Sethi, a gastroenterologist trained at AMMs, Harvard, and Stanford, via a detailed report in the Hindustan Times. He specifically elevates the walnut.
The biochemical profile of the walnut is entirely unique among tree nuts.
How so?
Dr. Sethi points out that walnuts are statistically the richest source of antioxidants among all commonly consumed nuts.
And he specifically mentions the anatomy of the nut, right? The part that most people find slightly bitter.
Yes. the pellicle.
Mm.
That thin, slightly bitter, flaky, papery skin that covers the actual walnut kernel.
Oh, that annoying skin that gets stuck in your teeth.
That exact skin is absolutely loaded with concentrated vitamin E, naturally occurring melatonin, and a dense matrix of polyphenols that aggressively hunt free radicals and calm systemic inflammation in the gut.
Wow, melatonin. Like the sleep hormone.
Yes, naturally occurring in the walnut skin. Furthermore, walnuts possess the highest omega-3 fatty acid content of any nut.
Oh, wow.
We just discussed the critical importance of marine omega-3s in fish for structural brain health. Walnuts provide a powerful complementary plant-based source of these essential fats.
That's amazing.
Dr. Sethi's review noted that regular walnut consumers exhibit better memory retention, lower markers of systemic inflammation, and a significantly boosted, more diverse population of beneficial gut bacteria.
It is Mother Nature's little joke. A nut that physically looks exactly like a miniature human brain is loaded with the exact specific compounds needed to protect the brain. You can't make that up.
It really is a perfect visual.
Now, for the final piece of our deep dive today, I want to frame this as a bit of a nutritional battle.
Oh, a showdown.
The seed showdown. Drawing from the detailed macronutrient breakdown by dietitian Debbie Dishes, we are pitting two legendary super seeds against each other for a spot in your pantry: flax seeds versus chia seeds.
Both are remarkable functional foods. They are ancient, revered crops and absolute nutritional powerhouses. But they have distinct chemical profiles and physical properties that dictate how we should use them.
Let's look at the tail of the tape. In one corner, we have chia seeds, originating in Central America, historically prized by the Aztec and Mayan empires for sustained energy.
A truly ancient superfood.
For a standard 2-tablespoon serving, you are looking at roughly 130 calories and 10 grams of carbohydrates. But crucially, 10 grams of that is pure fiber.
Right, so the net impact on your blood sugar is effectively 0. Plus, you get 6 grams of complete plant protein.
And their unique, defining physical property is their hydrophilicity, their ability to rapidly absorb and expand in water.
They form a thick, mucilaginous gel.
Which sounds kind of gross, but is actually great.
This unique gel-forming consistency makes them incredible for gut health. As that soluble fiber sweeps through the digestive tract, it hydrates the colon and feeds the microbiome. And like the walnut, they are packed with ALA, which is a plant-based omega-3 fatty acid.
Okay, so that's chia. In the opposing corner, flax seeds. Cultivated in ancient Egypt and China, historically used for both food and textile fibers.
The challenger.
For a 2-tablespoon serving of ground flax, you get 74 calories, 4 grams of fiber, and 2 grams of protein. So strictly looking at the macros, they are slightly lower in protein and fiber than chia. But what is the unique superpower of the flaxseed?
Lignans. Flax seeds are exceptionally uniquely high in lignans.
And lignans are?
They are specific plant compounds called phytoestrogens that have demonstrated potent cancer-fighting properties in clinical literature. They're also incredibly rich in those ALA omega-3s, providing 100% of your daily recommended intake in just 1 to 2 tablespoons.
There is a massive biological caveat with flax seeds, a structural catch that completely negates their benefit if you don't know about it.
There is, and it is a vital mechanical dysfunction.
Explain this one carefully.
If you eat whole, intact flax seeds, say baked into the crust of a bread or sprinkled on a salad, they will likely pass right through your entire digestive system completely intact.
Like untouched.
The human digestive tract simply cannot break down their hard, glossy outer shell. To absorb any of those precious omega-3s or cancer-fighting lignans, you must physically mill or grind the flax seeds before eating them.
Or purchase them pre-ground as flaxseed meal.
Yes. Chia seeds, on the other hand, have a delicate outer structure and can be fully absorbed whole.
That is such an important distinction. People spending money on whole flax seeds and sprinkling them on their morning oatmeal are getting 0 nutritional benefit from the inside of the seed.
They're essentially just consuming very expensive, decorative roughage.
And there is a brilliant culinary hack involving both of these seeds, right?
Yes, because both chia and ground flax form that highly viscous gel when mixed with water. They act as brilliant, highly effective vegan egg substitutes in baking.
How does that work?
If you take 1 tablespoon of ground flax or whole chia, mix it with 3 tablespoons of water, and let it sit for 5 minutes, the resulting gel binds ingredients together in muffins or pancakes, almost exactly like an egg yolk would.
While simultaneously injecting fiber and omega-3s into the recipe. That is brilliant.
It's a great trick.
But you also have to be highly careful about how you store these fats, right? They aren't indestructible.
Oh no, they are highly fragile. Because both of these seeds have such a massive fat content, specifically those delicate polyunsaturated omega-3 fats, they are highly prone to oxidation.
Meaning they go bad.
They can go rancid and spoil quickly if left exposed to light and warm room temperatures.
Oh, wow.
Once you open a bag of chia seeds or ground flaxseed meal, it absolutely needs to be stored in the refrigerator or the freezer to preserve the integrity of those fragile, health-promoting fats.
If we synthesize this whole final section, how do these dense fats fit into the overarching longevity blueprint we've been building?
They act as the final stabilizing puzzle piece. If we are deliberately reducing our intake of animal proteins to keep IGF-1 low, and we're relying heavily on bulky complex carbs and legumes, we require concentrated energy density to survive and thrive.
Because we still need calories.
Exactly. The monounsaturated fats in the extra virgin olive oil, the brain-supporting omega-3s in the walnuts and ground flax, and the massive fiber payload in the chia seeds provide that sustained, slow-burning energy density.
To keep you going.
They keep your insulin levels incredibly low, they actively suppress cellular inflammation, and practically, they provide the satiety that allows you to sustain the longevity diet long-term without feeling constantly starved or deprived.
Okay, we have covered an immense amount of biological ground today. From the DNA of a yeast cell to the exact temperature of your cooking water. Let's do a rapid-fire recap of the ultimate longevity blueprint we have constructed from these sources.
Sounds good. The overarching vital takeaway is that the goal isn't starvation. It is strategic, targeted nourishment.
Right.
It's about taking your cellular factory out of relentless, damaging overdrive and intentionally putting it into maintenance and repair mode.
First, we manage the win. We implement an 11 to 12-hour daily eating window to rest the metabolic system and allow insulin to drop, without risking the cardiovascular stress of extreme daily fasting.
And perhaps 3 or 4 times a year, we implement a 5-day fasting mimicking diet to trigger deep cellular autophagy, clear out autoimmune junk, and unleash a wave of regenerative stem cells during the refeeding phase.
Second, we manage the what. We restrict our daily intake of animal protein, and specifically the amino acid methionine, to keep the pro-aging IGF-1 and mTOR pathways quiet.
We build the physical foundation of our plate on 45 to 60% complex carbohydrates, heavily relying on the unique protein profile of legumes and the dense fiber of whole grains and wheat germ to blunt insulin spikes.
We strategically deploy our cellular defenders. We eat raw or mildly steamed cruciferous vegetables like broccoli to unleash cancer-fighting isothiocyanates, taking absolute care not to boil the vital enzymes to death.
And we cook our tomatoes in olive oil to activate the lycopene.
And finally, we optimize the physical structure of the brain and heart with 25 to 35% plant-based fats.
We bring in freeze-dried wild blueberries to maintain vascular flexibility. We eat walnuts for their melatonin and neuroprotection. And we utilize ground flaxseed and chia for stable energy and lignans.
And to you, listening right now, taking notes on all of this, remember that while the core biological science, the pathways conserved from yeast to monkeys to humans, is universal, true health span optimization requires personalization.
It's not one size fits all.
You have to adjust this blueprint to your specific reality, your age, your biological sex, and your current metabolic status. Remember the stark data from the Cell Review under 65. Keep the protein low to avoid accelerating aging.
But over 65, you must actively increase it to prevent frailty and muscle wasting.
It is a dynamic, evolving blueprint, not a static, dogmatic rulebook. It requires you to listen to your biology. I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over as you go about your day. We have just spent the last hour meticulously discussing how the invisible chemical compounds in our food, the anthocyanins in a blueberry, the myrosinase in raw broccoli, the methionine in a steak, can literally alter our genetic expression.
They literally talk to your genes.
They can dictate the speed of our biological clocks. They can regrow the insulin-producing cells of the pancreas in diabetic mice. And they can rival or even enhance the effects of targeted synthesized pharmaceuticals like chemotherapy.
It's immensely powerful.
If the precise combination of food is genuinely this powerful at the molecular level, we have to ask a foundational question about the healthcare system. Will the future of anti-aging medicine actually be found in a pharmacy pill bottle? Or will doctors soon be analyzing our genomes and prescribing highly precise, genetically tailored grocery lists?
That is the future we're heading toward.
We started this deep dive talking about the comfort of an X-ray, The reassuring binary precision of a broken bone versus a healthy bone. The dietary landscape used to feel like completely muddy waters, just a confusing ledger of calories.
But that's changing.
But as we pull back the curtain on the actual cellular biology of aging, those waters are rapidly clearing up. The diagnostic X-ray machine isn't broken. We were just looking at the wrong kind of image entirely. We don't need a static snapshot of our bones. We need a dynamic blueprint for our cells.
Beautifully said.
Just remember, stop boiling your broccoli. We'll see you next time.